everybody. It's the top of the hour. Welcome to another Creative University session. I'm Peter Ciotti. I'm the chairman of Creative University. And today is a special session. We've had a lot of really good ones, but today is a very special session where we have my guest today is Troy Carter, who's, as I say on the slide cover there, he's a true Renaissance man. I've known Troy for several years now, and he's involved in a lot of things. Troy, how are you doing? Good to see you.
Good.
Really good to see you. Before I give your bio, Troy, why did you choose that song?
You know, I think it's one of the most well-written songs that I've heard in a long time. I think she wrote a masterpiece.
Reason enough. Good. So as I was telling everybody, I've known Troy now for several years, and Troy's always been just a really open, friendly guy, obviously pulled many different ways. And so I got to know him really in kind of media tech circles, because Troy's best known for music, but he's much deeper than that. Let me give you a quick bio, but then Troy, I want to spend this session having you take us through your journey into where you started and how you got to where you are today and what you're doing today. But like I said, I want to give everybody an opportunity to ask questions because there are a lot of them. Okay. And so people, put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and then I'll get to those later on. Okay. So we can let Troy get into the flow and talk about his career. But very briefly, Troy has truly done it all in the world of music and innovation. He's the founder and CEO of Q&A. That's his latest venture, a technology and media company focused on powering the business of music via distribution, services, and data analytics. Previously, he founded and ran Atom Factory, where he nurtured the careers of Lady Gaga, John Legend, and many, many more, of course. And he most recently, before founding Q&A, was the global head of creator services at Spotify, overseeing the company's growth strategy for artists. So working very closely with artists, of course. And if that isn't enough, in 2017, Troy also was named as the entertainment advisor to the Prince estate. And so, heavily involved in everything Prince, who has special significance to me since I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, especially during the heyday of Prince, by the way. Troy has many, many interests across media, entertainment, tech, and culture. He has an investment firm, so he's made investments in Uber, Lyft, Dropbox, Spotify, Warby Parker, and many others, not bad picks, and also serves as a trustee for the Aspen Institute, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and CalArts. So a lot of give back philanthropic stuff. And that's why when I reached out to Troy, he was very enthusiastic about being part of Creative University and speaking to you all about his journey. So Troy, I'm going to just let you kind of take it from here, where you've done all these fascinating things. But how did it all start? So like when you were a young kid in school, how did you begin? And first of all, I guess, when did you know that you wanted to get into this industry? And then how did you take your first steps into it?
Yeah, I think I fell in love with music like when I was probably, I would say 12 or 13. And it was like sort of birth of hip hop culture. So it was more than just the music. It was DJ culture, graffiti culture, break dancing. And so you sort of had this shift that went from like an older generation of like sort of Motown and R&B music to this hip hop DJ culture that just so happened to hit as I was at like my most formative age. And I just fell in love out of the gate and wanted to dress like Run DMC and rap like LL and just whatever I could do to be a part of the culture, I wanted to do it. And formed a rap group in ninth grade and met two of my closest friends who were still close to this very day. And we started rapping and said, if we meet Will Smith and Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince, they're going to sign us. And we waited outside of their recording studio for months, actually, like after school, and hopping a train to go down there. And one day we got in and met them and became friends. And we put out a record that was terrible. Uh, uh, and but I learned a lot about the business just through the process, and I was curious about the business and how things worked. And I they let me intern for them.
And you, and so just on that point, you didn't have any connections going in. You just made it happen.
Yeah, zero connections. So,
Yeah.
so but I think we had this. We were brave and naive at the same time in terms of, okay, we're just going to go and wait outside of this recording studio,
Yeah.
and really didn't care how silly we looked out there in the snow sometimes. But I think it was the passion that drove us to do it.
Yeah. 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 And so once you did that, then, and you got your first internship doing what exactly?
Sweeping up Jazzy Jeff's recording studio, running errands, getting the car washed, um, carrying crates of records as he would go do his gigs. Then I was an assistant for Will Smith's manager, James Lassiter, and answering phones and running errands for him. And then I interned at Bad Boy when Puffy started Bad Boy Entertainment. I interned for him and sort of did everything. It was like this sort of rotating internship where you went
Yeah.
from department to department. But it just was wanting to be around the culture and around people who inspired me. And so I was willing to do it all.
So that's something that's a recurring theme in all the sessions that I've had, in all the interviews where, I've been fortunate to feature some really interesting, successful people who have made it in very prominent positions. And everybody essentially talks about the fact that if there's an opportunity, don't think it has to be like the perfect opportunity to get your foot in the door. Is that, like, be open to possibilities and take that shot, and then frequently a relationship forms that starts you on your way if you really prove yourself, if you're really tenacious, if you really like go the extra mile, right? All those kinds of things.
That's absolutely right. And I think the some people approach it where it's people don't want to do the grunt work, or you might have this idea of dream role, and like, this is the role and I'm just going to hold out and sort of wait for it. And but what I noticed in my own experience is that once you're in, you learn a lot, and so you learn sometimes of what you don't want to do. My initial thing was, I thought I wanted to be a music artist. And at one point, I promoted a lot of parties and shows in Philly, and learned a lot about being a promoter. But I learned also that I didn't want to have a career as a promoter.
Yeah.
And it was fun, and it was like a nice thing to do at the time. But it's gaining all of these different experiences along the way, and that allowed me to get perspective of, me managing artists. I have empathy for promoters because I've been on the other side of that. Me working up from taking out trash and doing things along those lines gave me empathy for teammates who come to my team, or who are on other teams that are starting from the bottom, working their way up or whatever. So I think it just has given me a more well-rounded, empathetic point of view of the business overall.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So from those internships, then what was your next major step beyond that?
I got when James fired me. He called.
See, there's another thing, people, that we get fired.
Yes, exactly. It's par for the course for me. Um, but for James, he's funny because he's like, Troy. He wrote me a letter. He's like, it was something I got honored for UJA a couple years ago, And in the book, to take out the ad, he said, to a great businessman, but worst assistant of all time. You love James.
Yeah.
And but James fired me, and he's still a close friend, and I love him. But he sent me back to Philly, and it actually humbled me. And it was a really humbling experience having to go back and explain to people why I'm back in Philly, because it's like, you do all of this to sort of make it out. And
Yeah.
then here I am back to where I started. But during that time, I ended up connecting with Eve, who had just gotten her record deal with Dr. Dre, and I was helping her find a manager. She knew I had good relationships with different people, and she offered me the role. And so I started managing Eve, and that was sort of like my first professional grown-up job in the industry.
And so you had not been a manager before. You saw a number of different parts of the business, so you learned a lot of different things. But it's not like there was a playbook on how to be a manager, right?
No, exactly. I was lucky enough to have been around, Benny Medina and James Lassiter and P Diddy, and to kind of understand what it meant to shape a career, but I hadn't done it myself. And Eve had a tremendous amount of clarity, and she's from Philly too, and she's like, she grew up in under tough circumstances, and so I think it was this sort of mutual drive and also a mutual understanding of each other because we had similar backgrounds, and so I think it was, I wouldn't call it easy and from an execution standpoint, but it was easy having somebody who we built a tremendous amount of trust with each other.
Hmm.
So Chris Lighty, and who was an incredible manager he's no longer with us, and Todd Moskowitz, who's the founder of Alamo and an incredible label head. They gave me a desk in their offices in New York. So that was like a master class of
Yeah,
learning from those guys. And
sure.
so I had a lot of people around me that helped shape my point of view as a manager.
And then, so how did that lead you to discovering or meeting Lady Gaga and then that relationship? And then that led you to John Legend and just many others, obviously.
Yeah, so even so I ended up building a management company. I signed Eve and partnered up with a guy named Jay Irving, and Jay and I built a boutique management company called Irving Wonder, and we have Floetry, Beanie Siegel, Nelly, Khalees, a few others, and we sold that to a company called Sanctuary in
Yeah.
2004. And I moved back to LA and opened up their LA offices. It wasn't a great experience for me. Like, it just was a bit of a culture shock working for that company.
Yeah.
It just was much different from the culture we had built in Philly, and all of a sudden it just felt super corporate. It was a publicly traded company, and we ended up parting ways. And about a year and a half later, and I started a new company, and Eve didn't want to be part of the new company. She wanted to go into a different direction, which caught me off guard at that particular time. But I ended up having to start over. And so, you know, all of the money I made from that sale, and was gone within a year and a half between buying a new house and reinvesting in this new company that I was going to start. And so literally I was starting over, and a friend of mine
By the
called me.
way, that's another thing that, like, you've done all these things and amazing accomplishments, but it's another lesson for everybody out there. It's that, as you said, that was like, it sounds like it was a pretty devastating or challenging time in your life.
It was
And
traumatic.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
it was traumatic. Just because it's like growing up broke is one thing because you don't know any different, and it's like so. And when you're younger, you you could take more risk. So it's like, if it's just me, I could sleep on friends' couches or, whatever else or whatever. But, at that particular time, I have four kids. We have five now. But at that particular time, I have four kids. I had a lot of responsibility. I had tuitions and, mortgage and bills and car notes, and to not and still took care of my mother in Philly and my grandmother. And so it was pretty bad, what not like getting wiped to zero, and my house was being foreclosed on and all of those things. And so um and that was 2008, by the way, 2007. So
Yeah, that's not that long ago.
yeah. And at that particular time, people on here might be too young to remember, but that was the financial crisis. So it's like banks were folding, and like, nobody had capital at that particular time. So it wasn't even really places to turn. But you know, a friend of mine introduced me to meditation at that time because he knew what I was going through, and it helped me out tremendously in terms of being able to center myself and kind of come out a little bit out of the funk, and also just kind of shift my energy because I was in a really dark place. And so another friend introduced me to Gaga, who had just gotten dropped from Def Jam, and she was actually sleeping on her grandmother's couch in West Virginia, trying to kind of figure out what she was going to do next.
By the way, that was a great decision by Def Jam, don't you think?
Hey, listen, it's like you can't catch them all. I told L.A. Reid, who dropped there, L.A. signed right after he dropped there. He signed Justin Bieber and Rihanna, so he didn't do too shabby.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, no question.
and she was a piano player. She didn't have a lot of those songs at that particular time, but I think her being in the circumstances that she had just come out of being dropped, and me being in my circumstance of, hey, I got nothing to lose and I got to figure this thing out. We just kind of set off on this path and like worked really hard and created this incredible relationship. And Jimmy Iovine, signed her at Interscope, and Vincent Herbert was the executive producer, who, really talented person. And she made a great record that took a year for one song to catch on. So it's not like it happened overnight. It took a
Yeah,
year for her first single to catch. But we just heads down and worked hard.
yeah, yeah. And that, then John Legend followed and many others followed from because Lady Gaga was your first with your new company essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And so we signed John Legend from there. We broke Charlie Puth, broke Megan Trainor, Lindsey Sterling. We managed Priyanka Chopra, but bunch of different acts. And then at the same time, we decided, I think going through that crazy financial experience, it was like, okay, I started investing in startups around that time.
Yeah, how did
Uh,
that, by the way, how did that happen? Because that's not obvious for, somebody who's a manager in the music business to start getting involved in investing in startups and tech startups and things like that.
Well, I think because we couldn't get a lot of Gaga's music played on the radio,
Yeah.
Twitter was just coming out, and YouTube was just coming out, and Facebook was just kind of coming out of, off of college campuses. So we just started using digital platforms to promote her, and so we would upload these videos every week on YouTube called Gaga Vision, and we started noticing it getting like fans in different places. And so as we built, that became our strategy, was digital. And a lot of entrepreneurs in the digital space, we started meeting people, and one person connected us to this person connected us to this person. Next thing you know, somebody said, if you want to invest in my company, I'll make some room for you to invest. And that just kind of started me investing in entrepreneurs, which, something I still do to this day and love.
Absolutely. That's kind of how I met you when I was doing some advisory work for some media tech companies. But so there's another lesson where you weren't getting play with Lady Gaga in conventional ways really significantly. So you started experimenting, it sounds like, with all these new social platforms that were really in their early stages, where again, you didn't have a playbook. You just experimented, saw what worked and put a little bit more attention, and it kind of led to that part of your career.
You try everything, and that's something I push my team on every day is like, sometimes you just experiment and you
Yeah,
push and you just
yeah,
see what works, you see what doesn't work. And we tried so many things with artists over the years, because the key thing is if you really believe in it and you have that level of conviction, look for the early signs of smoke. If they're, we call it the first 50 fans, and it's like, can we find those first 50 fans? Can we build community? Because that's when when you can talk to them every day. You know them by name. They feel like they know. Fans had my telephone number or my email address. They knew me by face. I knew them by face. You would see them as you would go to different places or whatever. And in tech they call it, doing things that don't scale,
yeah,
because once you get to millions of fans around the world, it's impossible to do it on that level. But when you are starting at a small level, that's what actually builds community and gives you the luxury of building those really strong ties, and those are the fans that'll be with you for the rest of your life. So a lot of those learnings that I learned on the music side in terms of building fan communities, I actually work with founders, within our portfolio companies about launching products and building loyalty and community amongst customers as well.
yeah. I mean, look, that's one of the things I really think that like the direct artist fan engagement leads to so many possibilities, and fans want to support the artist, and they want to get close to the artist, right? And be part of their lives. And so it's a great symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, one of the things I learned from working with Will Smith is like Will's incredible, because he's the same guy that I met, in 1989, as he, it's still to this day. And what he told me was that as an artist, when you meet somebody, you may forget that in 5 minutes, but when they meet you, they remember for the rest of their lives. So it's like, so what I learned for young artists when, that I sign, I teach them a lot of those same principles, because you might wake up and have a bad day, and you could have been in an argument with your boyfriend, or you got bad news about something, and you meet a fan at the airport, and you don't feel like talking. They're going to remember whatever interaction that you gave them. They're going to remember.
Yeah.
So you got to show up. That's part of your job, is actually showing up. And there's a lot of learnings in that for companies, in terms of customer service. What are those little interactions that you have along the way? How can you go the little extra distance because they remember, people remember those interactions where you may forget.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice, by the way. There's so much to cover in your career, so I'm gonna go to your A next. All these phases kind of intertwine in your career because you've done so many things. But so investments, management, ultimately that led you also into Spotify. So tell us a little bit about your Spotify experience and how that happened, what you felt about working with a monster company like Spotify, all of that.
Yeah, funny enough, they were a much smaller company when I met them. So
Yeah.
like, so I met Daniel through mutual friends, and we actually really bonded on a trip to Ethiopia, and with a group called Charity Water, and where
Yeah.
you spend days going through village to village, and I think it was probably 25 of us all together on that trip. But you become pretty close to people at camp for instance, right?
Yeah.
So, but I just liked his mentality of where he wanted to take the world and how his point of view on the music industry. And so I ended up making an investment. He would call me for just as he was thinking through US strategy on getting certain pieces of content on the platform. Because back then, artists didn't want their music on streaming because they were still
Right.
making a lot of money
Right.
off of physical CDs and downloads. And so I worked a lot with him and his team on strategy and intros and things along those lines. And as I was thinking about not doing management anymore, he and I happened to be working on a project together with Spotify.
Can I ask you
And,
just one question about that? You said
Mhm.
not, you were thinking about not doing management anymore. Is there a particular reason why you felt that way?
Yeah, you know what? I think it like for me, like looking at scale and scaling myself and looking at quality of life as well in terms of like spending my time on the road because it
Yeah.
was, when you're a manager, if there's a tour, chances are you're on that tour. And I
Yeah.
think, it was certain things I had to sacrifice, with my kids as I was building my career. And then I think, later on in life, it kind of turns into choices.
Hmm.
And so I was kind of pulling back a little bit on that. And so it was and also I was really intrigued with this intersection of music and technology. There's nobody better at that than Spotify and the team that they built to do it. And so and it was pre-IPO in terms of the mission that the company was on and what they were looking to accomplish. And so it felt natural. And I went in to create a group called Creator Services, which kind of served as the bridge between the music industry and Spotify. So record labels, music publishers, artists, music producers, and kind of looking at everything from licensing arrangements, how artists interact with product,
Hmm.
all of those things. And it was an incredible experience, probably one of the best professional experiences that I had, and I learned a lot. And
And they brought you in. I remember that was a time where Spotify was actually getting a lot of, before bringing you in, Spotify and the other streaming companies, like you said, it's not like artists and labels were loving streamers, right? And so Spotify was seen by many as just being a tech company out of Europe that wasn't particularly artist first. And so bringing you in was a central part of Spotify's strategy to transform the way that many thought of them and to really bring the artist community in closer. I remember that very vividly. So it was an extremely impactful role within the company.
yeah, if it was one word that I would boil it down to, is trust. And because I think there was a mistrust between tech and music,
Yeah.
and then there was a real mistrust between the music community and Spotify specifically, and I think it went both ways. And then it was these cultural gaps because it was a Swedish company,
Yeah.
and this sort of U.S. centric culture where most of the labels headquarters were based. So culturally, these were really U.S. driven companies, and capitalism versus socialism sort of mentalities. And I was very clear when I went into Spotify that I need this space, and I need you guys to give me your word that what I say in these rooms to people actually sticks, because some of these meetings are happening because of my 20-year relationships.
Yeah.
So when I can walk into Lucian Grange's office or Rob Stringer's office or one of the top managers' office, is because there's a level of trust. And if I give them our word, hey, Spotify is going to do XYZ, I need you guys to deliver on this, because if that erodes, then there's no relationship there. And
Yeah.
so we were able to do it. It was very, it was successful in terms of being able to bridge those gaps. But I'm an entrepreneur at heart,
Yeah.
and it started feeling like a job after a while.
And
And I'm
it's a big place.
yes, and you know what? I never, all of the jobs that I had were either made up jobs or like super scrappy jobs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is my first time ever working for like a big company. And I never knew about corporate jujitsu and stuff like that, or
There's a
politics.
lot. I've been there.
Yeah, and that was new to me, and all fantastic people, but it's like 3,500 people. It's like it became it started feeling like a job to me, and music has never felt like a job,
Yeah.
and I didn't want it to start going in that direction, so I decided that it was time.
Yeah. No, look, like I said, I totally get that. Uh, Absolutely. Like there's a lot of parallels to the way kind of I approach things. But um, so for all of you who are out there, uh, and you're thinking about different careers in the business, a couple things from there. Different environments are, they may speak to you differently. So some people like it the Troy Carter way, where you create like this and you create your, you're going out there, you're really putting yourself out there without a net. And then some people are more comfortable in a larger corporation. There's no right or wrong answer to any of these things, but
Exactly.
it's like, this goes back to what Troy was saying at the beginning, which is experiment, try different things, put yourself out there. Don't wait for the perfect thing, because Troy started interning and look where he got. And it wasn't like you had a path where you mapped it out that I was going to go from here to here to here to here. There's a lot of serendipity to it. And the underlying glue are the relationships that you make, and people believing in you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like, and that you build those by showing up.
Yeah.
Every room should be better because you were in that room. So it's like so be a giver. What can you do to to add value, and even people notice, the people who people pay attention, and people notice. And the other piece is really understanding that there isn't really, like, when you're on that journey kind of figuring things out, I don't believe there's a such thing as failure during that time, like where things may not necessarily have worked out, but that may just be shaping you for understanding, like putting on that checklist of things that you don't want to do or things that you didn't like, so you can make that sort of adjustment or point you into another direction. But because I know what ends up happening is, like, people will begin to judge themselves or judge that particular experience, and sort of use that becomes a barrier to get to your next thing.
Yeah.
So just being kind to yourself, and kind of taking a step back to be able to look and say, okay, you know what, that didn't work. Let me try something else. But knowing that, understanding why that didn't work, and not making that same mistake again.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's also great advice that's recurring through a lot of the conversations I've had with via Creative University, which is everybody had their, like, what was I thinking, or failed moment, or fired moment, or some missteps that seemed like they were career ending at the time, but it just led you in a different direction. And so, as cliche as it sounds, you can't be afraid to fail. Like, you have, it's critical to try different things, to get exposed to a lot of different things, but give yourself a break if things don't work out. Like, just is, it's not easy to do, but you have to give yourself a break. And during these crazy times when people are locked in and everything, just to try, takes whatever steps you can. And that's something Creative University tries to give, is like real internships, real opportunities for those who really want it. But I want to, one other thing that you mentioned, I think is really important for everybody out there. Whether you're a creative, a singer, um, somebody creating movies or whatever, or if you're on the technology side, all of this is coming together. And Troy's career is a great example of that, where music and media came together with his experimentation in technology, and it's all coming together. So it's critical to have an understanding of both the art, the content, and the technology that powers new ways for fans to interact with artists and to, experience music and all that kind of stuff. I think that's fundamentally critical, that all of you should read up on that, learns the language of the other side of your brain.
Absolutely. And cause, and the best creatives I've worked with are the most curious people that you'll ever meet, and they're just curious about things. And I sent a memo to my staff over the weekend, and we were kind of talking really about being able to dig deep in understanding certain things. And an example that I gave him was like with Leonardo da Vinci, how he would study cadavers because he wanted to understand how to draw the human body.
Yeah.
But in order for him to understand, he wanted to understand how muscle tissue worked inside of bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So literally would go and do dissect cadavers. And so, that's a level of understanding craft in a way that most people and most artists wouldn't go that deep in terms of understanding craft. But that's what separated Leonardo da Vinci from every other artist, within his period. And that's why we still talk about him. Kobe Bryant studied basketball, more in Prince. Prince was such a student of music and the game, and played almost every instrument because he went that deep around curiosity. And so I think it's like, people, and my wife makes fun of me because I go down these rabbit holes. And my 17-year-old son has the same exact thing where he'll go down these rabbit holes when he wants to learn something. But so for me, it's I'll do drive-bys on certain things that I might be interested in, that might be, okay, let me just learn about this. But when I really want to understand something, whether it's been investing or whether it's been art or whether it's been music or what, it's like specific areas, I go all into that level of dissection that we're talking about. I just go all in on that dissection.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. That's great advice. And I love the Da Vinci example. So before we get into the Q&A, because there's a lot of it, one thing you mentioned, we talked a little bit yesterday, and you mentioned something about mentorships and internships and how a lot of people get them wrong. And I'm curious what you meant by that.
Yeah, it kind of goes to what I was just saying about, sort of every room being better because you were in it. And I think it's just, those relationships, mentor mentee, are two-way relationships. So even with my mentors, my mentors have mentors, by the way. So you never get too old or become too successful to have mentors. But for my mentors, I invest in those relationships. If I see an article that may be interesting, that on a subject I know that they care about, I'll send it to them. If there's if I see something that might be, oh, XYZ might be, this might be a cool little gift for such and such, I send it to them. If there's a birthday, on what if I have deal flow on investments, I'll send it to my mentors to make sure that that I always try to make sure I'm doing stuff for them.
Yeah.
I always try to make sure that I'm doing stuff for them. Because even people who might be very successful, and it's always something you can do for somebody. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even if it's a note, you know what? I was thinking about you today. How's your day going? It's like, just so, but where it's not just a thing where you only call when you need advice, or you only call when you have a problem, or,
Yeah.
also call and share your good news. So if somebody gave you really good advice and that advice actually turned into, a result, that's positive reinforcement on your relationship. When your mentor hears, hey, wow, they actually listened to some crazy advice that I gave them, and they got that role or that promotion or that client. So just it's a bunch of little things.
Yeah. No, listen, one thing that I really appreciate in this talk that we had today is the fact that you shared your failures as well as your successes, and that you were very candid about them, because it shows everybody, like, there's this perfect seeming, this, this sense that sometimes you hear names that everything's perfect, and it's not, it's not. Everybody has their challenges. So I want to get into the Q&A, but that was great stuff, Troy. So before we do that, just wanted to let you know that we have people here from Paris, Victoria and Gael, Philippines, Raymond, Singapore, I think it's Moose, Dublin, Southend-on-the-Sea, Essex, London, AJ in London. So we have people from all around the world, literally, and a lot of people who can't tune in live streaming. This will be on demand, by the way, everybody. So I have a number of questions, and this one comes from Lauren, out of New York City, and she's at Loyola University in Maryland. So she says, how did you stand out? Well, I'll say this, or I'll ask this question because she has a few of them. How important have you found it to listen to your inner voice?
Very, very, very important. I listen to my inner voice. My inner voice is my final decision on everything, by the way, on everything. Like I'll take in opinions and information and things along those lines. And a lot of times that helps to form my inner voice. But if that thing in me is telling me, hey, you got to do X, Y, Z, I'll go against every piece of information. And as a leader in my company, I'm willing to eat it a lot of times. Or as a leader in an organization, I'm willing to say, hey, you know what? All of you guys might be completely right. And if this goes wrong, I will completely take full responsibility, but I got to trust my gut on this. And because my gut is what got me to where I am. But the key thing with inner voice, though, is you got to be quiet enough to actually listen to it. So this is like, and for me, in the mornings, I wake up super early to nothing. Like, so where it's like just blank space, essentially. I get up before everybody in my house. I'm up before, my email is going crazy or people are calling me. And that's, to me, is when I find that time to at least be able to listen.
Is meditation still important to you?
Very, very important, very important, very important. And like, even if you can't meditate, just finding time to be quiet. Like sometimes those are I'll drive with no music or anything else or whatever. And I always know thyself to grow thyself. 10 a.m. is probably the best time of the day for me to make decisions.
Interesting. That's
Late
good.
at night is probably the worst time for me to
Yeah,
make decisions.
yeah.
But part of that is understanding like where that voice might be at any given time.
Yeah. Know thyself, to grow thyself. I love that. Okay, Marlena from Hempstead, New York City. She goes to Hofstra, says, what is it like managing an artist who is constantly evolving and changing their style and aesthetic?
It's incredible. It keeps you, that's part of what I enjoy, is like just the making bold moves, like it's bold moves. So the superstars um make it interesting. That's how that's part of being a superstar. You make it interesting for your audience, and you keep them guessing and keep them in awe. So I think that's just part of superstar playbook.
Got it. Kit from New Orleans. She goes to Loyola, New Orleans, says that her dream is to be a concert promoter. She's studying public relations and a minor in the music industry. She's wondering if you could tell her where she should start, the type of career she has, because she has no idea.
Interning for a local promoter. I think volunteering, to do shows. A lot of those jobs start off as runners. A lot of those people are in the van picking up the talent from the hotel or getting stuff day of show. You end up learning so much. And I've built relationships with runners all throughout the country who all,
Yeah.
those runners end up becoming promoters or go work for other companies. But those are pretty easy jobs to get, by the way. But the people who are working those shows day of, they really get to see how it's built, and you also get to see the dynamic of teams, of like, okay, that's how the manager interacts with the artist. Oh, that's how the road manager, this is the role of the road manager.
Yeah.
Oh, this
Yeah.
is how the promoter interacts with the talent. You start understanding, oh, these are writer requirements for the dressing rooms. So you start learning the language and the rhythm. So I think working for a local promoter is probably the easiest thing to get.
And that's another good thing, guys, that some advice to you about, especially during these crazy times where you may not be able to get out of the home much. Um, for if there's something that you're passionate about, reach out to an organization or a small company, or stop by a small company or something and offer yourself up and maybe
Yep.
create something or suggest something, and don't necessarily expect to get paid for it. And look, I understand everybody needs money, so I'm not minimizing that, but just make an opportunity happen, because a lot of times they're there and the person you asked isn't really even aware of the help they need. But if you just show passion for it and say that I want to help you any way I can, money is not the reason why I want to do it. I just want to help and I want to learn. You'd be surprised. You can make a lot of stuff happen that way.
Absolutely. And if you're tearing tickets, be the best ticket terror that they've ever seen. So because I think the people who I remember, like, it was this one woman who she college student. This is probably 6 months before I stepped down at Spotify. All of a sudden one day I got this a bunch of us throughout the company all received the same text from different people in our network about some woman who posted why she was perfect to come work for Spotify for an internship, by the way.
Yeah.
And but she created a playlist around it. Like, it was very, very creative the way she did it, and it actually went viral. Departments were fighting for it. They didn't want to give it, they wanted to hire her. So it ended up being a battle between departments on hiring her. So it's like, and our internship, Spotify's internship, is one of the hardest internships to get. It's like, I think it's like 15,000 people or something crazy applying for it, for a couple hundred spots. And she ended up having a bidding war essentially. And I think she got a job out of it.
Yeah, that's a great story. Okay, Dimitri, and I'm gonna have to go rapid fire with you now to just get some questions in. So Dimitri asked, do you have any advice for how artists can better provide value to their fan base via social media?
Conversations. I think it's engagement, conversations. Treat them like they're your friends in your community, and ask them questions and let them hear things early, and like know their names, and these are badges of honor for them. So I just would say, just invest in the relationship and not make it transactional.
Yeah. Okay, Gene from Hollywood asked a question: what are managers specifically doing for their clients to increase their business and maintain their relevance during the pandemic? And if they've added or changed anything from their normal list of, she says, client duties.
Yeah, is pretty broad, because I think it's, so many managers doing so many things.
Yeah.
I think brand partnerships have been going steady. I think live streams have been going steady.
Yeah.
a lot of artists have been releasing a lot of music still, so from a production standpoint, you're still seeing a lot of production. But you look at what Travis Scott was able to do with Fortnite, and
Yeah.
you look at it, like it's so many Roblox and what's his name, Old Town Road. But any which way, you're seeing people are kind of forced into finding other areas. But it's I think some of the best managers have kept their businesses going and up,
And experimenting.
yeah.
And really, like, the best managers are the ones who know about all these different things and create the Fortnites for, like, Travis Scott. Those are nobody, Marshmello had done it before to a certain extent, but like really like getting cues from this and ideas from this and pushing the envelope. So Wayne
Yeah.
asked the question, where do you think the opportunities lie in the artist development space?
Um, I would say the opportunities are are software driven opportunities. And what I mean by that is, on average, it takes about 3 years to break an artist right now. And I consider that part of the problem is a tremendous amount of volume out there right now, and to really kind of cut through the noise. And I think being able to find audiences for artists by way of understanding data is going to be a huge key and accelerate in that process. And not only accelerate in the process, being able to go deeper into it. Because this is a quick example, one of the things we've been spending a lot of time on internally in one of the rabbit holes I've been down is understanding. I've been talking to a lot of um, analytics companies and in the political space around how, when you take somebody like who like, you have Bernie Sanders, for instance, right? How do you connect a candidate who has these values with constituents and voters who might share similar values? So, and that's what ended up happening with Bernie, with a bunch of, like, a lot of politicians over the last 6 years have
Yeah.
used similar strategies in terms of audience matching.
Yeah.
And music was interesting that we don't do, and that we've been spending a lot of time learning about, is that when you look at an artist like, let's say like Gaga, for instance, right? Um, Gaga connection with her early fan base, a lot of it had to do with the music, but more of it had to do with her message to young gay kids, because this was a time before Marriage Equality Act was signed. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was in the military. You had a lot. It was still a lot of homophobia and homophobic structures in place. And all of a sudden, here comes a singer that was speaking vocally to that audience about pride, about safety, about self-love, about community, all of these things. So people felt emotionally connected to her. So what's missing right now, in terms of how do you discover fan bases, beyond just the music of like a Discover Weekly type tool that matches based off of listening habits,
Yeah.
what about point of view?
Yeah.
So if you have artists who are strong about climate change, that might be a social issue. They, just because they're not making records about that doesn't mean that they may not. It might be people out there who might connect with them over that message, and
Mhm.
then pulls them in to their music. So you might feed them social content, on that audience, social content on TikTok. You might feed them social content on Instagram, things along those lines or whatever. And that might be things that actually, and your music might be in the background of those messages, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
So there are multiple ties and multiple reasons why people become fans of artists outside of just the music alone.
That's really interesting and couldn't agree more. And and like you said, there's so much opportunity to really build that in, or to expand the hooks. So there is that kind of connection of authenticity that leads to all kind of positive things, including on the economic front, to help the artists make a living and
Yeah,
create their art.
absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
one last question. I'd love to ask so many more, guys, and I'll stick around for those who want. I'm going to let Troy go at the top of the hour, which is now, but one last question, if you don't mind, Troy. I'll stick around for anybody who wants to learn more about Creative University, how to get involved, upcoming sessions, because there's some great ones. I'll ask Chloe's question. On the topic of experimentation and looking for early stages of smoke, what are your thoughts about Clubhouse and how it can be utilized to build authentic communities and fans?
I'm a huge fan of Clubhouse, and I think it's a generational company. And I think what it did was is very similar. Clubhouse is similar to gaming, where I feel like gaming has sort of separated stars from civilians. So like where, you could be in a Fortnite game with one of the, with somebody with one of the biggest Twitch followings or influencers within that space, and anybody could become a star at gaming. So it's not like athletics where you got to have this sort of physical ability
Yeah.
or singing or something along those lines. And I think Clubhouse, you could be in the audience with superstars, or you could be within 2 seconds listening to somebody drop these gems or whatever else. And what I'm noticing is that influencers are starting to surface in the space now. People who you've never heard of before all of a sudden are gaining followings on TikTok, and you're hearing music rooms pop up in TikTok now. And so I feel like this could be an important tool in how artists communicate with fans, how communities self-organize, in a way with a lot of context, because I think voice and without pretense, where it kind
Yeah.
of gives you this ability to build these authentic communities as well. So I'm really, really bullish on it.
Excellent. Troy, really, really appreciate you being part of this and giving yourself and your time and your thoughts and advice and all your openness and candor about your career, your life. And, it's such a fascinating career you've had. You're a good guy. I value that because goodness is always a good thing. And so thank you for joining. I'm
Thank
gonna
you for
let you
having me, Stephen.
go, and
Thank you for
I
having me.
appreciate it. Never hesitate to reach out to me. And for everybody else out there, I'm happy to stay on. I'll answer questions about Creative University. But thanks, Troy.
All right, head out. Thank you.
All right, everybody. So that was a special treat. Troy obviously is a busy guy. He has a lot, and he doesn't give many interviews, and so he wants to help. He really wants to help, and he feels for this cause of wanting to give back and give inspiration for all of you out there who are passionate about the business. And so that's what Creative University is about. As I said, I really urge you to go to Creative University website. There's a lot of material there to learn more. And that's just, I think you saw it before, creative, CREATV .media/creative, CREATV -university. Okay. If you go to you'll find it. Also, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I have a small but passionate team, my family, and a number of like hardcore Creative University members who are building this. And it's very organic. It's very organic, but we go to bat for those who really want this. And it's about democratized access. That means that people who really deserve to go to bat for, to help them find that internship, to help them discover that, to help them learn more. That's part of that is helping to build Creative University so we can impact more people. So some of you can just look at the video sessions that we've had because they're amazing and they're across the industry. So you have some who are venture capitalists, leaders in venture capital, many artists like Claro, the lead singer of Devo, which was a fun one. one of my favorite artists, Radical Face. But your A&R exec, one of the top A&R execs, her session, Rachel Craig's session about how to break artists and songs right now, she gives special sauce that isn't out there. It's not public information, like how artists can really break and in this kind of streaming era. It's for those of you who are musicians or managers or anybody, it's just who like music, and that's all of us. That's a really fascinating one, but there are so many more. CEOs of major companies in the media and entertainment space. And like I said, real internships. So we need people, or we want to help you. That's what it's all about. So get involved if you're passionate about this mission. Get involved, help grow it. The more we learn about you, the more that we can help you find that role, because I have a nice Rolodex that I can open up and try to make something happen for you if I get to know you and if my team gets to know you. And so there it is. So I'm going to leave it open now. Are there any questions? You saw one thing. I'm going to show you on the screen share the next sessions. So register on the Creative University website for these sessions. Jeff Cottrell, if for any of you who's interested in marketing and branding, Jeff's one of the biggest minds in the world with great experiences with major brands. He was chief marketing officer for Converse, Coca-Cola, worked with Starbucks, board member of the Grammy Foundation. He's also involved in a lot of things and also understands how important technology is part of all of this. Jeff's a great guy too. Evan Shapiro, another really interesting guy, good guy, Emmy and Peabody award-winning creator of 150 plus shows and podcasts and all kinds of things, including Portlandia, which is one of our family's favorites. Former CEO of National Lampoon. He ran one of the major streaming companies at one of the major studios at NBC Universal. He teaches at NYU Stern School of Business, at Fordham in media studies. He's involved in a lot of philanthropic stuff, which is really cool too. And then, like I said, there's Unum, who's one of our superstars, who started at Creative U as a student, is now almost like a teacher. But she landed her first full-time gig in the media and entertainment business with a live streaming company that's focused on music and festivals. And that came through her involvement with Creative University, and she's great. And so she's like sets the example, but she did this 3-part series that you'll find on the Creative University website and on the YouTube channel about how to land that dream gig, that dream job in the business. And it's in 3 parts: networking, cover letters, resumes, and then interviewing. So, all right, I'm going to answer some questions here. If you have questions, let me know in the chat. Okay. Troy was awesome. Yeah, that was Grant Gensky said, thanks, Troy. He was awesome. Kirk Capistrano says the same thing. Absolutely. Sydney asks, is there an opportunity to work full-time for Creative Media? Creative Media is my firm. That's my business firm. That's media, entertainment, tech stuff. We do a lot of cool stuff. So the answer is yes, like absolutely. Getting involved in some social media, maybe some of the marketing efforts, but more than that, like for those who are passionate and really prove yourselves, you'll see a lot of really cool stuff. It's fun. I'm involved in a lot of fun stuff in the music business and the media business in general and tech world. So reach out to me, send me your CV, but more importantly, also send me a video of yourself, just like what you're about. And it doesn't have to be beautifully produced. Just use your iPhone or, use your phone, send me a video so I kind of get a sense of who you are. But Creative University, which launched with, like I said, out of Creative Media, but with my family, because we really care about this mission and want to help. There's lots of opportunity to get involved with Creative University to to reach out to television stations, to publications, to get the story out there, because it's a great story. A lot of success stories with young people getting great internships and such. And we want to be a place that continues to bring great minds in and just be helpful. You know, we want to be helpful, and we want to like be a home for good people to get that, you know, that big chance that can change your life. So yes, there's opportunity to get involved for sure. Lots of opportunity. And one more thing, who you see there, she came up with the idea of doing these workshops that she hosts. She does those completely on her own. She's great. You know, she's wonderful. She thought it'd be great to have some of these student to student workshops that are, you know, some are going to be wellness and health and wellness and mental health, and some can be that. She had this three-part workshop. But if you are motivated and inspired and you have an idea, tell us about what your ideas are, because we want to do this for you and what's helpful to you all. So if you have ideas, reach out to us. We'll give you the platform. We'll give you the platform. That's what this is about. It's an organic, living, breathing thing. That's what this is. I don't think there's anything else like it out there for the media and entertainment and tech worlds. And that's what's cool about it. We want to keep it organic. We want to keep it that. We don't want like big sponsorships for this thing. We want it to be this way. And because of the mission, we're attracting people like Claro and Troy Carter and CEOs for major companies, and the list goes on. So yes, long-winded way of saying, show us your passion. Absolutely. Molly, assistance in career development, get involved in Creative University. That's the best way, because as we get to know you, you'll learn a lot and really be dedicated to it. I mean, that's one thing, guys, as Troy said, and I feel the same way. If you really want it, like, make it a two-way street, show your dedication. You know, that's critical. That's critical, because if you create that connection with somebody who really sees that and feels it and sees that you're going to go to bat and work hard and all that, they'll go to bat for you. Absolutely. I'm going to check. So I think I answered all the questions in the Q&A. Now I'll check the chats. Okay. I think that's it. That's it, everybody. Get involved. Check out the next sessions. Ask questions. These are great. These were great questions, guys. And bring your ideas, okay? Wonderful to have you part of this. We'll keep working to get some great guests for you guys, and we'll work to get you some. It's very inspiring for us when we hear the stories about, you know, those of you who cross that velvet rope and get in because you deserve it. You know, not just because you have access, but because you deserve it. So there it is. Thanks, guys. Until next time.